we'll get started. Mike will give an overview of the company and some of our recent news. And obviously, we have two special guests with us, our new Vice President of Exploration, Dr. Danny Grobler, and Senior Geologist Albie Britz, both joining us as of about a week or so. So again, gentlemen, good morning. President and CEO Mike O'Reilly, as I mentioned, Danny and Albie. Mike, I think I'll just hand it over to you at this point. We're a few minutes in and you can take it away, and then we'll circle back and talk a little geology and have a rousing Q&A session. And we'll get everybody out of here by 11. I know everyone's on pins and needles waiting for the Fed announcement, so we'll get you out of here in time for that.
Sure. Well, thank you, Chris. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Very pleased to have Danny and Albie on board. I'm going to roll through an updated deck. We've got some new slides in there, talk about personnel, talk most about the most recent drill results and what we see for the coming year in the Stillwater District. We are indeed building a world-class critical mineral resource in the USA. Well, we'll be making some forward-looking statements. Talk about management team. Greg Johnson, of course, Executive Chair. Co-founder of NovaGold, saw that from 10 cents a share to 2 billion in market cap, and that's a lot of the playbook that we're working from here at Group 10. District scale asset acquired in the bear market, tens of kilometer footprint in the soils, and then build it out into an improving market. Myself, I'm a founder of Group 10. I've been there since day one, and I have experience in the mining and mineral processing industry since the 1990s. We added Gordon Toll to the board, past deputy chairman of Ivanhoe, also of Fortescue, and that speaks to the size of the Stillwater asset, the potential that we see there. He's been involved in building some very big mines globally. The technical team, every exploration growth stage company says they have a truly world-class team. We really do. The expertise here on these layered magmatic systems, I think, you know, especially spanning Stillwater and Bushveld together, is unparalleled. Dr. David Broughton was one of the first to tell us that the recognition of a Platreef setting in the Stillwater District was real, and that was 4 years ago now, 3.5 years ago. I'm very pleased to announce that we've just about a week ago, last week, announced that Danny Grobler and Albie Britz were joining us to round out that team and complete those Bushveld parallels that we see. This is probably a good time to bring Danny and Albie in just to speak to their background and the parallels that they see in the districts.
Yes, thank you, Mike. Good morning, all. Yeah, I've been in the industry now about 35 years, of which 25 years was spent so far in the mining and exploration industry in South Africa. So initially I started off on some greenstone belt gold deposit stuff for Harmony Gold in my early years in the industry on an open pit mine. I then progressed to the northern limb of the Bushveld complex here in South Africa on the Platreef since 2004. So I've been here now around 18 years on the northern limb of the Bushveld. It's been a really good time for me on the northern limb. There was some significant challenges understanding this Platreef style of deposits in this area. And I think with a very competent team we've built up on the side, we've been actually able as a team to unravel this very complex geology for Ivanhoe Mines on the Platreef style deposit, which is now being built into a mine. So I'm very excited to be able to bring this experience now to Group 10 Metals. To the Stillwater complex. We're seeing significant parallels, and we recognize a whole lot of the rock types there that we've been dealing on this side that have kept us busy significantly on the scientific side to really understand these rocks. So I hope we can bring all this experience to Stillwater and make a good impact with the very experienced team that's already there. With Group 10 Metals. think that's from my side. I'm really excited to join. So over to Albie.
Yes, okay. So I started off in base metals and remained the largest part of my career in that. Although I did some greenstone work in the Barberton greenstone belt and around Petersburg, and then some diamond work around Mokopane as well. But the largest part I spent on the northern limb, from north to south along the 100-kilometer strike. We did quite a few projects, very exciting stuff that we did. But the latter part of my career, I spent a lot of time with Ivanhoe along the northern limb and the projects they had there, and where we looked at everything in the stratigraphy from lower zone up into the main zone. We even looked at the magnetite layers further up in the upper zone. And there's so many analogies to Stillwater. That's the main reason why I decided to change continents for a while. Stillwater is a very exciting area to progress into next. My heart's always been into exploration and the adrenaline that goes with that. So as soon as a project goes into mining, I start to wonder what's beyond the horizon. So we see a lot of the same type of rocks between the two complexes. They look the same. I'm sure they're not really the same. Each one is special in its own way, and it will give us the challenges we need, that we expect as well. Thank you.
And we're very glad to have you. And that really is the point, the parallels there and the benefit that we get from your experience in the Bushveld and Platreef. Platreef, of course, 113 million ounces, billions of pounds of nickel and copper. We'll touch on that in a minute here. Increasingly, those words are coming up in our work at Stillwater. And that's why the connection, continuing with the technical team here, Dr. Craig Bowe has been at Stillwater since the late 70s, actually, and has been global in pursuing these magmatic systems and layered magmatic systems. Increasingly, he's been looking for that Bushveld input and the exact experience that Danny and Albie have. So it's a very good fit. Mike Austenson has 20 years of experience in the district, which is marvelous for us on permitting and logistics and all this stuff. He's drilled these rocks for 20 years. Just Madru was the original vendor of the property, actually, and he's what told us that half the Stillwater complex was available. Got us in there. He's our geophysicist, and he's been an integral part of the team ever since. Altogether, you've got a fantastic, really over a collective 100 years of experience in these magmatic systems spanning both Stillwater and Bushveld. And as you'll see in the coming slides, the growth potential that we see at Stillwater, we're rewriting the textbook on the lower Stillwater complex, and it has a lot to do with the giant mines of South Africa. The advisory team is excellent. I'm glad to have them. Good basis in mine engineering, geology, and also metallurgy. Industry partners, we're very pleased to have partnered with the USGS some years ago, data sharing at Stillwater. They've seen the recent core and they're as excited as we are about it. We're certainly benefiting from that relationship. They, of course, write the critical minerals lists that Washington, D.C. receives and makes policy on. UBC, we're partnered with Dr. Greg Dippel's lab to look at the potential for carbon sequestration at Stillwater. This is not unique to us. This is something that ultramafic rocks in general have a capacity to do, but how quickly, how economically, reaction rates, that sort of thing. We've passed the first phase of work and we're on to the second, and we're excited to bring that to Stillwater as a potential. The idea here is to pull CO2 from the atmosphere and bind it permanently in tailings of a potential mining operation and put it away in geologic time underground. And Goldspot, we've been we've partnered with Goldspot 2 years ago now, and their work with artificial intelligence and machine learning has been instrumental in terms of our substantial database and rapidly developing targets. Let's talk quickly about our resource estimate established in October of 2021, and then talk about the basis that we see to expand upon these. At a base case, 0.20 nickel cutoff, nickel equivalent cutoff, which is about a little over 0.5 gram palladium, we have 694 million pounds nickel and 1.3 million ounces. Palladium, total of 1.1 billion pounds. Battery metal, 2.4 million ounces of PGEs and gold. And that's contained in 157 million tons at a healthy 0.45% nickel equivalent grade, or 1.2 grams platinum equivalent. If you prefer straight nickel equivalent, that's 1.6 billion pounds and about 6.8 million ounces gold equivalent. If you go to a higher grade cutoff, a more selective mining scenario, 0.35% nickel equivalent, that's nearly a gram palladium equivalent. We still have over 500 million pounds of nickel and almost exactly 1 million ounces of palladium. So it's a robust resource, it's a robust debut, and it shows good continuity. As you roll up the cutoff grade and go to more selective mining methods, the bodies hold together and nicely, and you'll see from our results that we're hitting increasing grade as well. It's a famously metal-rich district. We see significant expansion potential, and we still have 5 holes pending from the 2021 drill campaign. In terms of the commodity split, we have 8 of the commodities that are listed as critical by the US government, working with the USGS. As of the October 21 resource and the prices that were used on that, it's about 42% nickel by value. Next up, palladium with about 20%, on down through cobalt, copper, platinum, palladium, and platinum, rhodium, and gold. We also have significant chromium, which has just recently been listed as critical by the US government. In fact, 1.3 billion pounds total. We're not including that yet in our economic projections. We want to know more about metallurgy, recoverability, but it's real. And of course, the Stillwater district was known historically for high-grade chrome mined during the 40s and 50s. Our objective is to become a primary US-based source of low-carbon critical minerals in the US. 8 of our commodities have been identified as critical by the US government, and we're in a famously productive US district. We're essentially bringing the 3rd phase of critical mineral production to the Stillwater district. If you consider chromium mined during the war years, and then high-grade PGE starting in the 1980s and increasing since then, we're effectively adding battery metals to that mix along with the PGEs the district is known for. Take a quick look at the effect of updated commodity prices on those resources. Those are the prices used as of the October 21 resource estimate. These are 3-year trailing average prices as of about July. If we go to current 3-year trailing average prices, the nickel in particular moves up a bit. But the most interesting example is to go to spot prices, where nickel has more than doubled, cobalt has nearly doubled, and we see those significant increases in value in those 2 in particular, up over 50% nickel value now. In terms of gross contained value and the NSR value gross per ton, again, before recoveries, just on a 100% basis, we move from nearly $12 billion gross value up across $20 billion gross contained metal value. Our market cap is currently 60 million Canadian, so this is a very favorable comparison. NSR value is moving from $74 US per ton up to 129 at today's prices. And a little chart of how that looks, also presenting the commodity split. Nickel dominant, but palladium very real as well, and cobalt increasing. On a contained metal basis, we're at the upper end of projects at our stage. This is presented in millions of pounds nickel equivalent. And we are right up against the upper end of projects at our stage. The ones to the right have PEA studies and later wrapped around them. A robust debut, and we look forward to moving further to the right. On a grade equivalent basis, we're nicely in the middle of the pack and looking again to move to the right. Worth noting that the projects on the right-hand side of the screen are generally much smaller. Talon Mining, for example, if you get to the percent nickel levels, you're really looking at millions of tons, tens of millions of tons at best in deposit size. And we're already at 157 million tons with substantial room to grow. You simply don't get percent level nickel and those 100 million ton figures together. And then at a market cap, we currently have an analyst report as of January suggests we should be at 133 million market cap. And actually, to arrive at that number, they discounted our resources by 50% on the fact that they're inferred resources, just to be conservative. Even at that discounted rate, we're currently about a 60 million market cap. This is more than double just on that basis. And of course, we see ourselves moving to the right here as we continue work growing the asset and de-risking it and wrapping metallurgy around it and such. It's worth calling out Noront on here as well, because of course that was the subject of the bidding war between Wyloo and BHP. That bidding war really was not about the 20 million ton deposit that's defined. It's about the district and the potential of the district. That's exactly what we see at Stillwater. We have a district scale asset, and we really are just beginning on the potential there. Talk a quick bit about Montana and the resource industries of Montana. It has a long history of mineral wealth. Oil, gas, coal, mining are still major revenues for the state to this day. Like much of the Western US, the history begins in the 1850s when gold miners came across from the Carolinas and made a number of discoveries before moving to California and then up through the Yukon. By World War I, it was the dominant copper producer in North America, and large-scale copper mining actually continues to this day. We have the Black Butte project coming online with Sandfire as an underground copper operation. We have the Continental Pit still in production in Butte. In terms of majors, Rio Tinto recently partnered with the U.S. Geological Survey for the Earth Mapping Resources Initiative. This is a large airborne survey being done targeting critical minerals just to the west and north of Butte, as you can see in the Boulder batholith. We also have Ivanhoe active at Hog Heaven doing an earn-in with Brixton, and Rio again at the Madison project with American Pacific. Those guys are doing great work. We just saw them at the show in Vegas. We're focused on the Stillwater complex in the south of the state. The district, of course, is dominated by the famous, iconic Stillwater mines, now run by Sibanye, and we share that district with them. This is one of the largest and best layered magmatic systems in the world. It's the only one really of world-class size in the Western Hemisphere. And it has a long history of production of the commodities listed there. We're very glad to be there. Quick summary with some pictures. Work on our ground really begins in the late 1880s with mining of high-grade copper and some nickel. From there, chrome mining and exploration for high-grade iron during the 30s to 60s. High-grade chrome mined during the 40s and 50s made a real difference actually in the war effort. And then 60s and 70s, we see a shift to exploration for nickel and copper on our ground. 70s and 80s, you've got the discovery and advancement of the J.M. Reef deposit, and that's based on the Merensky parallels from the Bushveld, again making that connection. 1986, the Stillwater mine opens up on the J.M. Reef, and that expands in 2002 with the East Boulder, and then again with the Blitz mine in 2017. Sibanye Gold buys Stillwater in 2017, $2.2 billion US, and that's when we started staking ground there. Take a closer look at the district. It is a 40 by 8 kilometer layered magmatic system. It's a thing of beauty. It is often compared to the to the Bushveld complex rather, and it's highly prospective for nickel, copper, palladium, platinum, gold, chrome, and rhodium. We acquired this starting in 2017. We now have 100% ownership on a 61 square kilometer block. The district is known for that J.M. Reef deposit, 87 million ounces in current resources at the highest grade in the world for palladium and platinum, about a ½ ounce per ton grade. It's a thing of beauty. 40 kilometers span in one magmatic layer, about 1.8 meters thick. They run 3 mines on that, and they also operate a smelter, refinery, and recycling complex in Columbus off the screen. And Danny can speak to this better than me in the questions and answers session, but these layered systems are known to have an upper portion where the layers are discrete, and that's the setting for these reef deposits, narrow, high grade. And in the lower portion, you get these bigger events, and this is the Platte Reef setting. That's our focus, as you can see from the claim block here, and that's where our deposits are hosted. Next couple of slides are going to take a cross section through the black line there, and then we're going to look at the core 12 kilometers of the that basal and lower series that hosts the deposits. This is a cross section north to south through that black line, and you see again the green banded series on the right hand side hosts those reef deposits. In the center of the screen is perhaps the East Boulder mine in this cross section of Sibanye. You can see they're mining up to about 2.2 kilometers down there. And north of them on our claims, again, you've got that Picket Pin Reef and that claim group that accompanies that. That's the correct setting for these narrow high-grade systems. Our focus is on the big bulk mineable systems in the lower portions of the system. That's the opportunity. We're really just continuing groundwork that was laid even decades ago. The parallels were known. We're simply the ones that have gone after it systematically in a supportive market and with the benefit of consolidating the claim group first and then the database along with that. There's a pictorial representation of how our recent deposits sit, and you can see the expansion potential shown there. This is a pivotal slide. This presents the combined induced polarization survey results from our 2020 and 2021 surveys. 2021 is simply the expansion shown at the left there. This survey was pivotal for us in terms of identifying economic mineralization in the lower Stillwater complex. This, combined with the other data layers plus 240 total drill holes, has been fantastic. In blue, you've got the conductivity modeled at a very high level, and in pink, you've got chargeability, all from that same survey. And you can see the lines that the guys walked in taking the readings for this survey. In yellow, you've got the deposit models that show 5 deposits across that core 9-kilometer area. The correlation with the results from that IP survey in particular is a thing of beauty, and it speaks to the expansion potential of these deposits. Each of those deposits is open to the adjacent and at depth. And our drilling in 2022 will continue to focus on expansion at the 3 areas that we drilled last year, being the hybrid DR at Chrome Mountain, the CZ at Iron Mountain, in the center area, and then HGR at Iron Mountain. I don't know that we'll get to drill Central and Crescent yet this year, but we look forward to that. To date, we've used 83 drill holes in the models shown here in yellow. We drilled 14 expansion holes in 2021, and we reported 9 holes from that to date. We hit in every hole, and some holes we hit spectacularly, as we'll touch on in a minute. 5 holes remain to be reported from that. We also have a further 133 holes across the 32-kilometer package that we have not yet brought into models, and these guide the exploration effort going forward. Touch on a couple of highlights. We just announced yesterday this beautiful hit in hole CM 2021-05, 400 meters at 0.3% nickel equivalent. The cutoff grade, as you recall from our resources, is 0.2 in the lower cutoff. So that whole 401 meters can very likely be included in an expanded resource. These are all holes drilled at Chrome Mountain were done in the area of CM 2020-04, which is also presented here. Nearly half a kilometer of continuous mineralization with this sweet spot of 8.5 meters at 1.74% nickel equivalent, 1.1% nickel in that interval, with apparent good metallurgy, given high tenor of the nickel sulfides in a preliminary look. This relates to that hit called out in red in 2021-05, announced yesterday, the 13 meters at 3.33% nickel equivalent. These appear to be the same interval, 125 meters apart. So very good expansion potential. You'll see that in a figure coming up here. At the CZ target area, similar story. We're drilling around that CZ 2019-01 hit there. 399 meters at 0.25% nickel equivalent, including, once again, a higher grade interval within that, 62 meters of 0.63. We just announced, I believe it was in the December release, 368 meters at 0.31% nickel equivalent, including 64 at 0.92, a very nice high grade hit with size. And again, that's 100 or 200 meters as a step out from that 2019 hole. Terrific expansion potential there, and we're optimistic about an expanded resource this year. Similarly, at Iron Mountain, we're following up on that lovely hit from 2019, 272 meters, 0.43% nickel equivalent. That's got that 26.8 meter core. Interesting that that's the same approximate thickness as the Flat Reef deposit of Ivanhoe's. Perhaps Danny can comment on that later, but we're seeing these. That's a common width for us in the Iron Mountain area. We announced just in March 369 meters in an offset of that hole, which includes a 115 meter higher grade portion within that, and then again successively higher grade intervals within that. Yeah, let's look at a brand new image from the DR and hybrid deposit area at Chrome Mountain. This is looking west-northwest, as you can see from the plan view there, and we're focused in on the 450 meter area between the DR deposits to the south and the hybrid deposit to the north. In the larger holes presented here are the 6 that we drilled in 2021. These are all now reported with the exception of a few partial results lower down in certain holes, and full rhodium results actually are still pending. Bulk of results have been reported now from these holes. The hybrid unit is defined primarily by drilling from 2007 by Beartooth Platinum, such as this really nice hit, 226 meters at 0.35% nickel equivalent, with a 24 meter core at 0.6% nickel equivalent. That's typical of what we see at the hybrid unit. We've drilled that as well. Those results are out there. And then that hole at Chrome Mountain 2020-04. This was a major discovery for us. A new horizon, previously not identified, 455 meters of total mineralization, and that sweet spot in there. Successively higher grades, once again, down to that sweet spot of 8.5 meters. It's running 1.74% nickel. Again, nickel equivalent. Again, that's got 1.1% nickel. Nice, high grade, chunky interval of very good looking nickel sulfide with about 60% value in the other metals as well. So I'll roll quickly through all 6 holes from 2021 with the benefit of this 3D image of how it relates to the resource expansion effort. Hole 1, 728 meters at 0.27 nickel equivalent. That's a whopper intercept, nearly 3/4 of a kilometer of continuous mineralization. And again, within that 159 meters at nearly 0.5% nickel equivalent. Hole 4 sits there. Did not actually drill through the DR. It went under it, or perhaps in front of it, as shown here. And again, long lengths above the cutoff grade of the 2021 resource. Hole 3, similar, 428 meters, 0.24 nickel, and within that, 30 meters at 0.5%. Hole 2 sits up there and actually did test the hybrid unit, 333 meters at 0.23% nickel equivalent, and 114 meters at 0.36. The hole that really got the attention and stole the show, again, we've hit in all holes here, obviously, but hole 5, just announced yesterday, very exciting intercept. The entire hole, 0.5 kilometer, was mineralized. We've focused on the 401 meter interval here, starting about 30 meters down, I think 35 perhaps, for the 0.30% nickel equivalent shown there. Nearly 0.5 kilometer again. We're seeing real size everywhere we go with lots of mineral in the system. Within that, 13.2 meters at 3.33% nickel equivalent, nearly 9 grams palladium equivalent. This is a whopper intercept. If you go to gold equivalents, it gets even better. It's actually shown there. You can see it as the orange band sitting. If it looks small, it's just because of the scale of the image here. And that actually equates, that's about 125 meters away from that interval in CM 2020-04. Which sits just to the west there. We're very excited by that connection. The team is excited, and we're looking forward to expanding on that this year. Hole 6, similarly, 345 meters, well above cutoff grade, and a core within that of successively higher grades. And I guess I should have touched on the yellow shapes are the block models, the actual block models, at a 0.20% equivalent cutoff grade. So all these holes have shown significant expansion potential, both scale and grade, in the area between those two. Key point for how does this look with respect to soil surveys? As you've probably seen, we've got the entire main claim block lights up with mineral in soils. Here we're focused on that core 12 kilometers, the DR and hybrid deposit area. The deposit outlines are the dotted lines there. And these bullets just relate the holes we just looked at there. Again, we're expanding on that hit in 2020-04. CZ deposit area, you've got some idea of the location there. You can see we're drilling off to the south of the known deposit area, and we're seeing excellent expansion potential there. HGR similarly, the one hole we've reported to date reaches off to the south, and two more are forthcoming quickly here, I think, given holes 5 and 6. More broadly across the property, that's the soils across the main claim block. We've got multiple targets to follow up on, very high levels of precious metals, base metals, and soils, a number of untested targets, and that speaks to the expansion potential. The blue line here defines the peridotite zone, and that's a key layer for us. Most, if not all, of our deposits are hosted in that peridotite zone, and you can see the correlation here, especially at Iron Mountain, of that zone with the metals in soil, so that this is well mineralized, it's expressing through the soils, and it helps us target in that environment. This is a magnetic vector inversion model that looks deep into the Stillwater complex. It's an older image, but it correlates very nicely with what we're seeing in the other data layers. Essentially, magmatic targets reaching down kilometers below the deposit areas. This is exciting stuff, and it reflects, again, the expansion potential we see at depth and the amount of mineral that's moving through the system, and the fact that we're rewriting the textbook on the lower Stillwater complex. It really hasn't been well explored to date, and we're in the happy position to be able to take a systematic approach and bring the great brains of my current team together with Danny and Albie from South Africa and really open this up and see its true potential. We made the first acquisition in 2017. We moved quickly to triple the land position. We drilled in 2019, 2020, and 2021. We did that pivotal IP survey in 2020, expanded it in 2021, and we released our first resources in late 2021. So we've moved quickly. Upcoming catalysts, more drill results, our 2022 exploration plans. We're now booking our contractors for the year. And we're looking forward to more agreements on secondary assets. We didn't really touch on our other district scale projects. We signed a deal on the Ontario Gold Project. Heritage is making great progress on that. And we're looking for a similar deal on the Yukon asset as well. You will see updates on ESG, carbon dioxide sequestration, and metallurgy forthcoming. And ultimately, a priority for this year is an updated resource estimate as well. And we see good potential for that, as you've seen in the drill results. Our share price has suffered, as many in the growth stage space. We have outperformed a number of our peers, but we are essentially flat on the year, and that is actually not bad at all, given the space. Producers, of course, are at record highs, and the commodities that we're chasing are at, in some cases, record highs or near. And as these cycles go, and as the rotation of capital from other areas comes into the commodity space, and specifically into juniors like us, historically, juniors have always gone up in value and followed the majors. And that's what we think is coming next. We're looking forward to getting news results out to drive that effort. Presently, we have a little under $3 million cash in the bank, and we have visibility to over a total of $16 million, with $13 million in the money warrants and options. 3 million of those are warrants that are well in the money and are coming in quickly here. The first tranche expires in August. So we're presently funded for everything we need to do in the short term, and we're looking forward to getting the price up with the news flow that we have and some of the initiatives that we have underway. 170 million shares out. As of yesterday's price, 35 cents. That gives us a 60 million market cap. And we see good basis for why that should be higher, as I've related. good distribution of shareholdings, management and associates in particular are a large part of that, which is very good to see. Institutional as well. US Global is a major holder, Sprott Asset out of Toronto as well. So in closing, we see terrific potential at Stillwater West. It's a very well mineralized district. It's been delivering critical commodities at a large scale for the US market for nearly a century. And we're basically bringing the third phase to that. It's a district scale asset. We own it 100%. It's top tier US jurisdiction. And it has that attractive mix of in-demand commodities. We're not a pure nickel play. We're not a pure PGE play. We blend them very, very nicely. Exploration potential, it is truly underexplored. 240 drill holes across 61 square kilometers is not a lot. There are large areas never tested, and no one's taken the systematic approach that we're taking with the kind of expertise that we're adding and taking. We are blessed with a substantial database, and we've developed a predictive geologic model. We have multiple kilometer scale targets for expansion of our existing resources. And Danny can speak to the size of the Flat Reef system, but we essentially, potentially on a size basis, could host multiple across that 32 kilometer span that we tied up in the bear market timeframe. Assays are currently pending from our 2021 drill program. In terms of the company, it's an attractive time to be doing what we're doing. We're a growth stage company. We have a veteran team and a fantastic technical team. We're fully permitted, up to 50 drill pads actually, and we're funded, and we have no debt. In terms of assets, we have 100% ownership on 3 district scale assets. 2 of those are effectively for sale, given our focus on Stillwater. Didn't actually touch in this deck on Black Lake, Drayton, Ontario, or the Kluane project, but those are excellent district scale assets, the type of which you can't buy anymore. You had to be active in the bear market to secure things like that the way we did. We're looking forward to announcing deals, further deals on that, in addition to the heritage deal on Black Lake. With that, I think I'll turn it back to Chris, and we can open up the question session.
Okay, maybe we'll get Danny and Albie to join us. And I guess I can just start off with an open question there, Danny. Is any just quick thoughts on things to add or so on, and then I can jump into some specific questions that did come in.
Yes, thank you, Chris. I think, like Mike mentioned, the district's actually underexplored. And we see significant parallels with that happened early on the Flat Reef exploration in the late 1990s and early 2000s. So that's a similar situation that we see for Stillwater, and that obviously gives us a huge upside. So that we can bring this knowledge from the Flat Reef into this area. Like I said, with a highly experienced team already there, I think we can make a significant difference. The Flat Reef historically has been enigmatic, and there were different opinions scientifically. On the academic side, people didn't really appreciate always what they saw. So you need hard work from exploration companies and their geologists to really understand how these deposits work. And I think the work that we've done here is an example of that. Yeah, so that's from my side.
Okay.
There's a famous expression that if you ask 5 geologists, you'll get 5 different opinions. We're very glad to have included you. You did an excellent job summarizing there of the fact that we've got this terrific Stillwater base, and now we're adding that Bushveld expertise and just continuing to leapfrog through the process. It's really rewarding. It's fun.
So, and as you can imagine, there's a lot of questions about 2022 programs and so on. So we'll get to that in just a second. But this one sort of jumped out at me because we did talk about it a wee bit previously. So somebody with eagle eyes asked of Danny or Albie, if you're still there, What is the significance of pegmatoidal style, as in your news release quote? And to the degree you talk about it.
Well, the way we see it, it's significant. On the flat reef style deposit, we've defined here the pegmatoidal peroxenite is the main mineralizing unit, and it's the high grade unit. So when I see mention of pegmatoidal rocks in Stillwater, it grabs your attention very quickly. And anybody that's worked on these kinds of deposits will know that. So there's several reasons why you form these pegmatoidal rocks, and it's very important to understand the processes involved there. And I think that's something that we need to look at in Stillwater and really understand what's going on there. And from the historical information we've come across, there's already mention of fairly high-grade intersections into pegmatoidal rocks mentioned in several parts of the stratigraphy. So I think that's quite important, and it's exciting actually to look at that. So the big thing is to find something that's continuous over a distance that becomes economic. And I think for any economic exploration geologist, that's quite important. You need to prove continuity on these kinds of deposits. And obviously, if these things are thick and the orientation makes it possible to mine, and you have access to drill it, that's quite important.
That's actually, that's a good jumping off point for, I guess, a sort of a follow-up. It's talking about what's in store for 2022 drilling, but the second part of it is, Danny or Albie, what would your wish list be for that? And maybe it doesn't have to be necessarily just 2022, but the next couple of programs, let's say.
It's a good question, but probably a bit unfair. We've only been working for the company for 3 days.
I was going to say, you can hand that off to me at any time.
I think, but I think for exploration geologists, we need to understand and find the priority targets very quickly. And that's going to be important. Group 10 owns a very large land package in this lower part of Stillwater. And obviously there's very exciting targets, but you need to sit down and refine everything and find your priority targets very quickly, I would think. And look at that. There's a wealth of information, obviously. So we need to go through that and understand what we're dealing with.
That's fair. And how about we agree to think about doing another webinar, but it'll be live from the Core Shack in Montana sometime this summer, if possible.
You bet. Yeah, we've got great Wi-Fi there. It's actually quite fun to present from there. With the rocks actually in front of you.
So, Mike, this is probably one for you. Anything further planned for the area with the very high-grade gold hits?
Yeah, the Pine target. That's interesting. That's that shear zone at the west of the property. There's a non-43-101 compliant gold resource there that we're building. Terrific grade, actually, 8 grams per ton gold. We got in there, did some good prospecting, mapping work in past years. You'll notice that we focused the 2021 IP expanded survey on that area and did tight lines over that drill to find gold. That was a key step for us in understanding structure and what to do next. So I know Craig and Butch and Justin have some thoughts. I welcome Danny and Albie's input as they get into the database and get going here. You will see that moved along this year. I don't know if we'll drill it or not, but we definitely will advance it. And yeah, it's a compelling target, and it adds high-grade gold to the story, as well as some very high-grade palladium, actually, and nickel.
If I can jump in briefly, that's why we're bringing Albie Brits, who's a structural geologist, to the team. I think to understand the structure is very important, and he's going to form an important part of that team.
That's a good pitch about how we like to do things broadly in the metallic group, actually, as well as at Group 10. We take a very systematic approach, and we're blessed in all these projects with a terrific database, but we try to underpromise and overdeliver in everything we do. And you're seeing that in the team we're building and the approach we're taking. So yeah, those are good words, Danny, about the pine target.
So back to looking forward a little bit. There's a few that are on this sort of theme. So when would you realistically expect an updated, this is going to be a 3-part question, so I'm going to bundle them. Are there early indications of the implications for the 2021 drilling on updated resource? Part 1. Part 2, when would that realistically be expected? And any thoughts on continuing to build inferred, or would there be infill for M&I as part of the plans?
Sure. We had hoped to already be close to an updated resource. Obviously, we haven't received all the assays yet. So that has been punted forward by some number of months. We do need assays in order to generate an updated resource. Targeting, that's, on a visual basis, we can do a lot, and we've got the majority of holes in now. And as Danny mentioned, we're blessed with a lot of targets, more than we can drill, frankly. So that process is well underway, subject to receiving final assays on those Iron Mountain holes. And we're about to book drillers, geophysics, all that for the year. We've sketched out at least a 10,000 meter drill program. The focus will be very much like last year, sort of 80% around the 3 deposit areas, 3 of the 5, which I think I touched on in that IP image. So growth is still fundamental for us. We see lots of room to grow this, and that will bring a higher share price, and that will bring bigger programs. And that's fundamental to what we're doing here. We're watching dilution. We will gladly drill more than 10,000 meters as well. We're sketching out 10,000 meters on a priority basis for now. Expanded IP survey as well. We'll do the middle area of that survey, and we'll go off the east end this year as well. That, as you know, is bringing fantastic understanding of mineralization in this district. I forgot the third part to that question, sorry.
That was kind of answered it, but it's to the next one, which is related, and that would be, again, kind of ideas on start date and cash position for the season and beyond.
Sure. Well, we don't like the share price right now. We want to work on that, before we do anything else, really. Start date will be late June, similar to previous years. Maybe mid-June we start to mob in and then hit it late June. And we'll run until late October, much like previous years. That's our plan right now. And we feel we can comfortably hit those drill metrics in that time.
Question is, can you please comment on how the actual 3.3% nickel equivalent compares to competing exploration projects, and maybe exploration projects in North America, just to keep that a little more.
Well, that's 2.3% straight nickel as sulfide. It looks very, very good. It's got robust cobalt. I've actually forgotten the PGE number. I believe it's 1.1 grams 4E on top of that. It's a really attractive hit. And more than the grade is the size, 13.2 meters. Anything with 13.2 meters of more than 1% nickel is compelling. And this more than doubles that, triples it if you go to equivalents. On a copper equivalent basis, that 3.3 is like 7%. And if you go to spot prices, it's even more. It's a beautiful hit, and it's obviously grown. Our early thinking, and Danny can correct me here, it's apparently grown from that 125 meter similar interval in hole 4, 2020, right? Where it's 8.5 meters at 1.1% nickel, 1.7 nickel equivalent. That's a thing of beauty. That's showing real size, real grade, and nickel sulfide in the US, right? It's very significant. And I guess it's never before been identified at Stillwater, is a point I didn't touch on before. The whole technical team, including the USGS, is delighted by that. It's drawing a direct parallel to the Bushveld and the underexplored nature of the Stillwater complex.
It's probably comparable to some of the lower parts in the Platte Reef, but also Kabanga and Tanzania, which is a fairly high-grade nickel deposit.
Which was just bought by BHP, or BHP
Yes.
bought into it, right?
Nickel tenor, Mike, has come up a number of times. Maybe that's a segue to just touch on that really quickly.
Sure, it's part of an early test that we do on these intervals as we hit them. We were actually trained on this. It was called to our attention by one of the biggest mining companies in the world, and a fellow there whose job it was to say no to people. It's one of his basic tools that he uses. It's a simple calculation that attempts to estimate the amount of nickel that's in the sulfides, basically. So he's looking for more than 2 or 3% nickel tenor in the sulfides. You basically subtract out the iron and everything else, and you focus on the nickel. We talk about that because it's a very good preliminary assessment of metallurgy and desirability of a nickel intercept. And I'm pleased to say that 8.5 meter interval 2020-04 and this recent 13 meter interval in 2021-5, those are both running 5 to 7% nickel and sulfides. They look really good on that basis. So that's what we say when we mean nickel tenor. There are technical papers written on this out there.
Jurisdiction. How is the experience in Montana?
It's been fantastic. We're in a very pro-mining district. We're in a very pro-mining part of the state. It was in my figure, actually, and I didn't talk about it, but there are oil refineries. What just happened? Can you hear me okay, Chris?
Yep, still functioning perfectly well. Yeah.
Okay, my screen just went black. I don't know what happened.
Oh.
Nonetheless, the show must go on. Montana's been a great jurisdiction to work in. We get permits quickly. The process is very clear. It probably helps that Sibanye is mining right beside us, of course. Yeah.
Danny mentioned sort of the embarrassment of riches in terms of number of targets and the importance of prioritizing those during exploration. That's as a segue to any thoughts on the reef style targets present at Stillwater West.
Is that a question for Danny or for me?
Take it. Danny first, and then maybe.
Yeah. Look, I'm always keen on reef style deposits in these layered complexes because that's where you usually find your highest grade. So if you can get some good thickness associated with that, that's obviously an obvious target. I'm pretty keen to look at Picket Pin itself, where Group 10 holds ground. I think it's something you cannot just walk away from. So we need to take a careful look at that also. But there is also potential in the lower part of Stillwater for actual reef type deposits. If you look at the geophysics, we can see anomalies that may be associated with something like that. So we just need to sit back and take a very careful look through all this information we've got. It's a wealth of information. It's very seldom that you find a company that's actually obtained such a large volume of very good information on geochemistry, geophysics, drilling data, all that kind of stuff, which is really important. So yeah, we're definitely keen to sit down with the existing Group 10 team and just work through all of this.
We're getting close to the hour, so just a couple more quick ones. And Mike, this one will be for you. When will you apply to go on the OTCQX?
Well, Chris, we're debating that internally. We may at some point go for an American listing too. For now, we're happy on the TSX Venture and the OTCQB. But this is an American asset and it has an American audience. We certainly saw that at the Vegas show. And in fact, that builds on a trend over the past couple of years we've seen with the American investing audience body bringing money back to commodities, and now more than ever understanding the need for critical minerals and domestic supply of critical minerals. So I think you'll see us increase our U.S. presence and move that direction.
Well, it's almost as though that was planned, because there was actually questions about the critical minerals, and we're low on time, but I guess quickly, have there been any incentives regarding critical minerals in the US, noting that there have been in Canada with some of the flow through and other incentives? There's been a lot of talk, but
there have been a number. There are billions of dollars, billions with a B, committed to the advancement of critical minerals in the U.S. And we're certainly tracking that and interested. We're working with the National Mining Association, and I'm actually doing a trip to Montana here in the coming weeks to meet with some senior officials on exactly that. The USGS, of course, gives us very good insight into Washington and writes the commodities lists for them, monitors the commodity scene globally. In terms of what we're doing so far, they've focused on processing within the U.S. As you know, the U.S. has one nickel mine currently, and it's set to close in a few years, and it'll be replaced by another proposed mine that's similarly quite small in size, 3.3 million tons of ore in the Eagle mine run by Lundin right now. I think it's 10 million tons in the Tamarack project of Talon, both excellent high quality projects, but small. That's it for nickel in the U.S. What we're doing has to be of interest. So far, those initiatives have not been focused on early stage exploration. We're now a resource stage project. We're gaining momentum, and I expect that will become increasingly relevant as we go forward.
Well, you did it again, because there was a question about exactly that, other nickel projects in the U.S. or cobalt projects, and it's a pretty thin herd, as you just noted. And then the trip to Montana will include the Clean Hydrogen Conference as well, where there'll be a presentation. So recognizing that as quite a flourishing and growing global kind of technology push that involves the platinum group metals.
Absolutely. And presenting mining as part of the solution, right?
Yeah, for the full supply chain.
Domestic source of platinum and nickel for batteries. We didn't touch on the nickel mining scene, but of course, nickel sulfide converts so cleanly to nickel sulfate needed for batteries, unlike the laterite deposits, which are 2/3 of the world's supply from Indonesia and such. This has to be good on a domestic basis within the US. And then you add carbon sequestration to it, and the potential for us to work with, say, those refineries in Billings. There are 3 major refineries not far from us in Billings, point source emitters of CO2. Take that carbon, put it in the tailings of a mine at Stillwater, put it away forever and get tax credits for it. That's a very attractive scenario on several layers.
So maybe I'll just give a couple of things for people to watch for. So tomorrow, there'll be a presentation for the OTC Markets Metals and Mining event. That, if my memory serves me, is 10:30 a.m. Pacific time. So that's 1:30 p.m. Eastern. And you can find the link on our website or on the OTC Markets website.
And our news release yesterday.
And in the news release, that's right. And then obviously we'll be at the Vancouver Resource Investment Conference in a couple of weeks. So that'll be live and in person in booth 111. Come and say hi. Watch for additional news.
We'll have some core on display. We
will have core on display there, and everyone will be on hand to meet. Maybe Danny, what's the maybe take us out with some final thoughts on just the project and coming on board, and then we'll let everyone go.
Yes, thank you, Chris. Yeah. Just briefly. We've been looking at this historic information and the available information from Group 10's database, and I'm seeing really significant grades and intersections that's been commented on historically, and it makes me really excited. And I'm sure Albie agrees with me. We would like to come and apply our knowledge there as far as we can with the existing team. And sort of unravel the geology of this district scale target that sits there, and we can't wait to get there. Thank you.
Okay, I think
just a quick note there, Chris. The meetings that I've seen virtually for now with Danny, Albie, the team in Montana, and the USGS. have just been great fun. It's all smiles as we compare geology and plan the path forward at Stillwater. It's immensely rewarding for me.
Excellent. And it'll be hopefully rewarding for our shareholders and stakeholders as well as we move forward. Okay. Thanks, gentlemen. And thanks everyone for joining us. This will be archived and recorded. We'll post that on social media and elsewhere to our email list and so on. So watch for that. Twitter at Group 10 Metals. And with that, I think we can call it a day and go watch for the Fed speak.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.